Maya, welcome to the show. You are just like right up my alley for one of the people that I have so many personal questions for, and I'm just ready to do this thing and get right into it.
I can't wait, Whitney. I'm really excited to be here. It's
Oh
great to
my
be with all of
gosh.
your listeners. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just first talk about financial health. You have literally built your career off really kind of bridging the gap of understanding what financial health is, how you're making it achievable and basically digestible to the masses, but also you've created these incredible apps. In fact, you call it the fitness app for your finance, which is called Nav.it. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Where did all this start, and like where did all this come from?
Great question. Long answer. I will try and keep it brief. I'm an athlete, grew up playing sports, many different ones, fell into tennis, absolutely adored it. If I was good enough, would have gone pro and said, screw it to education. Luckily, my parents had the foresight to say that I was not going to be the next Serena Williams and that I should probably focus on my education. I appreciate them for that. I also appreciate them for not having to graduate with that education with like mounting student debt. So I was able to kind of hit the ground running and figure out how I could like take, like every 22-year-old or 21-year-old who graduates college, if they can and can afford to do so, want to figure out how like the things that they love in context of their hobbies can actually translate to a commercializable like product and career for themselves. So I dove into sports marketing. I was an English and anthropology major. Marketing was like the only thing that made sense, as you know well, with those two contexts. Fell then into kind of a master's and MBA program, and then eventually landed as one of the first hires at a company called Bridge Athletic, which was is a fitness technology company that's focused on training high performing athletes all across different types of sports, different types of leagues, different kind of levels of athlete as well. And the whole premise was around like, how can you bring better strength and conditioning protocols to athletes everywhere and help collect that data and use that data insightfully to kind of measure their efficacy on and off the court. So we had a ball doing that. We basically created some of the first kind of like AI influenced data structures to help coach and inform athletes on their trajectory and their journey. And through that experience, we started to really drill down on like quality of life. So how do you measure your quality of life? What are the barriers to yourself and to your family that affect the way you perform, in this case and context, on and off the field, like literal physical performance day in and day out? And then, of course, attach that to how you earn money and how you build your career in that performance landscape. We got really granular around stress. And we really started to get excited around, okay, what are these kind of, again, qualitative metrics, self-reported metrics that athletes were reporting on to us about like what was potentially impacting how, again, they spent their time and impacting their career trajectory. Stress was a big component. And as you drill down into just like larger contexts of how chronic stress impacts all of us every day, chronic stress is the leading indicator of heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, like long-term health outcomes that not only affect the way we live our lives, but also affect our pocketbooks, right? Those are really costly chronic diseases over time that, frankly, too large of a majority of Americans are burdened by every day. When you look at the root cause of that stress, financial stress is actually the biggest indicator and the biggest cause of that stress over time. So we're kind of sitting here from like, again, a performance fitness technology landscape. But I was like, wait, if we're talking about preventative healthcare, and I always thought that like we should just make America move more, like very Michelle Obama, right? Like, just get more kids out onto a field playing sports. Yeah, that's a component of it, but that's not speaking to like their economic mobility. And if financial stress is the biggest indicator on their healthcare outcome over time, shouldn't we be reducing financial stress and improving their financial health to improve not just their economic mobility, but their ability to live into their 90s, right? So that's what kind of got me very bizarrely into fintech from fitness technology. got really luckily paired up with my now partner, Aaron Papworth, and we kind of joined together in 2019, in late 2019, to build what's now become Nav.it, which was effectively a way to help an everyday user improve their relationship with their money, improve their health around how they save, spend, earn, and protect that money over time. And then, ideally start to prove to healthcare that it's actually a viable measurement and therefore a viable thing for healthier healthcare to pay for over time. So we've gone through all of these iterations, but financial health is always at the crux of it.
I mean, so perfectly said. And I mean, I kind of want to dive into what financial health looks like. I mean, you really just kind of gave such an elaborate explanation of it, but I think that the way that you're kind of talking about how just our primary care has never really included financial stress. Yeah. It's never really been talked about, and yet it's so prevalent. Me and my boyfriend are both entrepreneurs, and when we talk about our stress levels, it always goes back to our businesses, and it always goes back to our financial situation. And it's the number one thing. And I mean, also too, I feel like the majority of America, that is also probably the number one stressor. So
70% of the workforce.
and it's incredible. And you also have something on Nav.it, I believe it's linked in your bio on Instagram, where you talk about taking this pledge. And I would love to have you kind of just dive in a little deeper into basically, you call it the financial health and safety pledge, and how you're kind of seeking to help organizations. Can you maybe go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm very grateful you picked up on it. It was kind of like this grassroots project me and some of our marketing team explored, I think early last year. So there's this so if we're talking about what kind of the root of financial health really is, right? We're talking about basically your financial security. So how the one that everybody quotes is, how capable are you of overcoming an emergency, of being able to pay out of pocket for an unforeseen medical expense, auto repair expense, like you name it, the kind of thing you never want to pay for, but like God forbid, knock on wood, it happens to most of us at some point, right? The majority of Americans cannot cover that averaged out $500 expense.
Wow.
So we like to lean in. It's super powerful. Yeah. Because we like to lean in on that topic around like, how capable are you of overcoming a financial obstacle that is going to occur at some point in time? It might not be, your car gets hit by an unknown vehicle, right? It might not be you get hit on the side of the road, God forbid. But it could be you find yourself, having your first child and not recognizing how much it was going to cost you out of pocket. So your hospital provider, when you're in the delivery room or when you're in post-op or whatever it is, tells you, you can just float it on a credit card. And so then you start to pay only your minimum of your credit card, which rolls you into a cycle of high interest credit card debt that after 3 cycles of a missed payment, most credit card companies know this, you're locked into that, paying that schedule for 10 years plus. You become effectively a bought-in loyal member that's paying a premium on a product because you can no longer afford to pay off the balance of that card every month.
Right.
So it's kind of like looking at how can you maintain this level of financial confidence based on how much you save, how much debt you accrue, and how much opportunity you have to protect yourself long into, say, retirement years, right? So financial health is basically like that component of your healthcare. If you start to think about your finances as a component of how you take care of yourself and how you protect yourself, just like we all intentionally know that like jumping off a bridge probably isn't the best idea, right? Like, if you start to think of your finances as a component of your physical health or your mental health, then you start to think about your financial opportunities and the way you move your money a little bit differently. So it's kind of a broad category, but largely speaking, it's around how, you spend, save, and earn your money and how that affects all of these other the wheel of healthcare, right? All these other health components to your life. And I honestly have forgotten the question, Whitney.
No, you're fine. I mean, you're honestly, this is stunning, and I think that you're totally hitting the nail on the head. My next question was essentially with this financial health and safety pledge, right, you're really seeking to change the way that organizations kind of operate and how they offer right, financial health support and services. So what does that look like? Right. And also, obviously, this is part of Nav.it's mission, but how did you land there?
So what we realized when we were measuring financial health and we were starting to conceptualize, like, okay, this isn't like one credit card product. This isn't one debt repayment product. This isn't one checking account or savings account. This is like a larger thing that we're talking about. Yeah. Just like how fitness, a decade plus ago, or mental health 5 or 6 years ago, or nutritional health 8 years ago, started to tell the end consumer, this is no longer a aspect of your health routine that's only earmarked for a certain percentage of the population. Like, we're going to make this, as technology allows, we're going to make this more accessible and more affordable to people, because it's really all about habit change. And when we started to dive into that, we said the same. We were like, okay, we need to build a product that's not predicated on percentage of assets under management or how many users we can sign up for a card. We need to build, like those other health tools, a subscription-based product that was really focused and incentives aligned with the end consumer. Now, it becomes a really interesting use case when you say, we're going to help you, Whitney, save money every month. We're also going to charge you $7.99 for it. There's right. The incentives are not always aligned. Sure. So we had to figure out what a sustainable revenue model would look like for us, like every other tech company does. Yep. And at the same time, we were having our direct-to-consumers, our consumers of our app, we call them navigators. Navigators were coming to us saying, hey, can I have my XYZ employer pay for the utility, like my use of this app, because they pay for my Whoop, or they pay for my Headspace, or they pay for these other things. Like, the users were starting to piece that together, which was super cool. So we were like, yeah, let's see what that looks like. And a whole other mess of things happened too, all really positive, around the same time, including Aaron and I, our interest in what was happening mainly with the female workforce. So we're a tool that's agnostic to gender, but we were finding that, horrifyingly so, financial abuse affects 99% of victims of intimate partner violence. 1 in 3 women in this country is a victim of intimate partner violence.
Oh, I just got chills.
Yeah. So that also told us that if you wanted to deliver on your promise to the workforce, that you were here to protect their health, you were here to protect their family, you were here to help make them be the most productive, loyal employee they could be, because you are going to provide them with all these tools and resources. We felt at the heart of that experience was protecting mainly women, and it's 1 in 10 men, mainly women, but your population, against falling victim, to the best of our ability, falling victim to experiences outside the workforce that they could not have predicted for themselves.
Wow.
If financial abuse is the easiest lever to pull for an abuser, because it's the easiest thing to take control of for another person.
Correct, yeah.
Then we needed to help better empower those people that lost that agency, or that were teetering on losing that agency. We needed to help kind of align ourselves with protecting those individuals. And that's really where the financial health and safety pledge kind of came up. It was saying, as an employer, like, I am providing as many resources as I can to my workforce to help them own their own wealth, to help protect their own legacy. Often that's in the context of their family. Of course it is. But it's recognizing that we no longer live in a day and age where we expect only one adult in a household to manage the finances, right? Like, my personal mission has always been to never have another woman come to me and say, I'm not going to understand finances, my husband does that for me. Because even if that's in the most loving and affectionate relationship, that's the easiest form of control to take in a relationship.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't think, as an identifying female,
Yeah.
I don't think we should stand for that.
No.
And I don't think we can afford to go on that way, given where we are from an economic mobility standpoint and wealth gap standpoint in this country. So this was basically me getting frustrated with the workforce. And
and rightly so. When you listen to those numbers and you listen to the domestic abuse or, relationships abuse coming down to the easiest trigger to pull is, the financial abuse. Like that's the first way I think is so eye-opening, because I think we hear so much about domestic abuse, but I don't think that, again, this kind of sounds new and fresh to me, but it's also something where I think it's automatically kind of associated. Like, of course they're taking control of the finances. Like, of course they're doing this, but to call that out, I think is, again, just so enlightening. And the fact where I truly see the problem and I truly hear that, because it's powerful. And I'm kind of I'm stuttering here because I'm like mind blown, because I think, again, like you kind of can always like assume that that's what's happening, but for you to say one of every 3 women, that's really scary numbers.
Like pulling one other girl. Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So
it's really,
It's incredibly frustrating. And I mean, how powerful for you to call that out and to want to make a move and to really make an impact with those that you're touching through Nav.it. I think that that's so special. As you've built the app, the app's out. I've downloaded it. I'm so excited to play with it. I'm definitely one where I'm always trying to look how to optimize my finances, and I'm always looking for things to kind of impact, my day-to-day, and to make sure that I'm savvy and that I'm keeping up with all the top tips and tricks. How does Nav.it stand out from a lot of these other kind of fintech, like app platforms? Because honestly, I've played with a lot of them. Yeah. And there's also this sense of overwhelm. And at least from what I've seen on your platform, it's very calming. Maybe it's the colors, maybe it's your branding, but
we're about to go through a rebrand too. You'll find it even more calming soon. What separates Nav.it from everything else? Yeah. Honestly, I think it's this recognition that financial health is the key to preventative healthcare. So if you start to think again about your finances as a large component of your overall healthcare routine, you start to think about money management differently. You start to think about it in the context of, okay, I brushed my teeth, okay, I did yoga, or I meditated, or I did my workout for the day. Let me go in and check on my finances. And then you start to think about, well, what does daily financial management look like? So what are some of the reasons why we all hate logging into, you name it, credit card account, or you name it, primary checking, and just combing through balances? Because I don't know if I can curse on here, but it's a shitty experience.
Of course you can.
It's a very shitty experience. And so what we said was, again, if we want to actually deliver on our promise of changing consumer behavior for the better, not just for the more profitable, but for the actual better, then we need to completely deconstruct how we interact with our finances every day. And we need to try and make financial health the easiest component to your daily healthcare routine. So what that looks like in person is we've had transaction swiping for a while now. It's kind of like, it emulates a Bumble swipe, really, where it's like, okay, these are the last 24 to 48 hours of your transaction history, because we're not going to try and overwhelm you with like that whole slate of the last 30 days. You can go into a different page and you can find that. But that's not going to help you every single day. You don't need to look at your last 30 days every single day. What you do need to do is align on your spending values. You need to say, like, did I feel really shitty about that purchase? Did I feel great about that purchase? Like, that brought me a lot of value. Or, is it a utility? And like, I swipe up for neutral. And then what you need to say is like, okay, we need to reward every user for making that commitment to engage with our app at least a few times a week, right? Like, if you're going to really be intentional about the ways in which you integrate Nav.it into your healthcare routine, we need to give you something really compelling back. And we do that in the context of insights. Fintech, by and large, has not evolved from generation one of fintech, which I call personal financial management, like from a technological base. So those are the mints of the world that have said, oh my God, you can now connect all your accounts in one place and look how great it is to see everything on one page. Yeah, it's great, but it doesn't tell you what to do next.
Yeah.
Ideally, what you need is like, yes, all the utility, you also need a guide. It's like saying, Whitney, you should really go work out 4 times a week with a progressive strength training routine, and we'll check back in whatever duration of time, and you just let me know how it went.
Yeah, it's too broad.
But like, you have no idea what to do if you've never done that before.
Totally.
So what we're saying is like, okay, you come in, you give us, you are giving data, like you are connecting these accounts, like it's de-identified and we don't host it, but you have it, you're doing it. So what are we going to show you back? We're going to show you back things like, Maia, in the last 60 days, you've reported that you were financially stressed about 40% of the time. But in the last week or so, you haven't reported any financial stress. We also see that you've contributed to your 401k matching plan. Congrats. That's awesome. Here's a badge. Like, here's some incentive. Here's a discount on something. Here's a reward for doing this awesome behavior that's actually improving the way you spend, save, and earn. It's not just, congrats, you swiped 10 extra dollars on your Amex credit card. Here's a gift card to Walmart that you're never going to use.
This is so interesting because, so when you were first talking about the swiping, immediately I'm like, oh, this is such an emotional connection to what you're doing with the consumer, right? Like you're prompting the consumer to reflect on those emotions per those purchases or finances or whatever.
Right.
But you're also, going back to what you said earlier, you're also prompting a change in their behavior, and you're changing the habit. Right. And again, it's like if you're rewarding them for the 401k versus the swipe on the Amex, it's prompting something inside of their brain before their next purchase to rethink about that purchase. And I love this because, again, there's not a whole lot that walks us through how we spend our money and how the guilt or the shame comes after, and then how sometimes we utilize that shopping or that experience as something to like fulfill us within the moment, whether we're stressed, like retail therapy or things of that nature. So this is, this is kind of wild that you're tying it so much back into the consumer behavioral and also the emotional side of the consumer.
Totally. And that's, there's so many different things I'm sure you could call out in the last 7 days, some emotional, response you had to something out of your control that influenced you to spend a certain way. Like just spend, let alone save, invest, protect, whatever. I always have it of like, if I don't sleep well the night before, so we track sleep in the app. If I don't sleep well the night before, I definitely am more inclined to like get the afternoon coffee that I don't need, that I can easily make in the office.
Feel you.
That, you know what I mean? Just because like I'm not cognitively there, so I have to get myself outside, which is totally fine. Like that's fine if you want to just budget for that. But I think it's an interesting thing for consumers to start to connect. And what we've seen over time, we now have thousands and thousands of users, and now we're working with employers, and it's like so cool to see.
That's so cool.
What we see is we have a lot of users who are like, I actually have never journaled before. Like I've never used a mental health app, or I've never used a fitness app before. But now like I'm thinking about like exercising more because of Nav.it. Like it's like the
awareness. It's like you're teaching people emotional aware, or just cognitive
just a
awareness.
Different access point. Exactly. And it's like, not all of us were like early beta Whoop users, right?
Yeah.
Like not all of us are like addicted to the quantified self movement.
Yeah.
Like most of America, especially, just needs some access point to feel okay, recognizing that their emotional state will influence their pocketbook at the end of the day. Like, and they need a brand to tell them that that's okay.
Yeah. Or just an educator, just you alone educating the public on again, like you're right. There's a lot of people that like, I mean, I feel like I've gone through so much therapy and so much self-help and professional and personal development that it's like, no duh, but you're right. There's also the whole rest of the masses that don't necessarily have access to that and or are not attuned to it or have never been educated on it. So this is incredible. I mean, this is beautiful. And I want to, I just love that you're obviously doing this, and this is so right up my alley because I'm all emotion and all awareness, and I love obviously talking about all these different ways where you can really optimize your day-to-day into a life of your dreams and really being able to capitalize on the things that you can do within your realm, as well as bridging, things like what you were talking about, like the wealth gap or just women's education and in participation in the finance world. I want to move into you being the vice president of the Monell Foundation. Okay. And I want to talk about this because, you're a founding partner in a private venture fund as well. So what moved you? Okay, first off, what is the Monell Foundation? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I never get asked this question on. You've really done your homework, Whitney. Yeah, typically we start about. Well, I mean, financial health is such a macro. Like I said, I have a
lot of personal questions. I'm just going for it.
I love it. Financial health is such a macro that I feel like we always focus on that. But I'm very grateful to be in a position where our family has been great stewards of capital for a really long time, mainly matriarchs, which I think is actually really important to our story. Yes, even in the 20s. Yeah. Whoa. And so
wait, can we get a quick background on that?
My great grandmother basically established two foundations. One is the Monell Foundation, but they're basically they both coincide together. And the Vetlesen Foundation, Monell is focused on early stage life sciences. Vetlesen's focused on earth sciences. And really back in the day, especially in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, like venture capital was not a thing. It was actually philanthropy. Like the first check in the door was philanthropic giving. And at the time, the first check towards catalytic, life-changing ideas was around earth sciences and life sciences, right? It was the precipice of like what we've now built the COVID vaccine on, right? That research was happening way back then on mRNA, just as an example. And so she recognized that, like I said, had been a really, I think, effective steward of capital that her two husbands
I love her so much.
Yeah, they were both wealth creators. One died early, and she married again. And she decided upon her death to establish these two foundations in their honor. So that's why they're two separate and not one endowment.
Wow. Okay.
And they've been really catalytic to, again, some of the kind of most basic life sciences and basic earth sciences that have really moved the needle forward in healthcare, in climate technology, climate justice.
That's incredible.
Of today, which has been really cool. And so I serve on the board of it. And it's very, no matter where you are, I think, in like your life's journey, your background, whatever experience you've had, I think it's always really positive if you can look to a figure from your past and your family and have a really positive kind of like North Star towards that legacy. I think, I feel really grateful to have that. I know so many people don't. And I think it's also very inspiring to continue to drive the work forward. And, once upon a time, it was getting people into hospitals and getting people access to healthcare. Yeah. That's still a huge problem in our country.
Sure.
But that was where she kind of like focused her time. And I feel like now I'm really focused on economic mobility so that people can afford the health system that we've established, for better or worse. And so, yeah, that's what that is. And then the venture side is my mother created a venture fund that was in support of the economic development of women and girls. And so that's the kind of PE venture stuff that we do.
So it just runs in the family. It just runs all the way down.
We're hilariously risk tolerant. Yes, we're all builders. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's bet the house on it.
But I mean, risk tolerant in the way of like, there's so much mission and there's such a there's such a there's such a vision for impact, and it's not small scale impact. It's like you said, yes, like very, very huge, large initiatives. And I just think this is so interesting how this is kind of your background and your story, and it's led you to where you are today. As an entrepreneur, as someone that maybe has been, been exposed to these huge initiatives driven to make, wide change, how does that help you in your day-to-day, like in your work? Like, how does that help you being being the founder of Nav.it, or being the co-founder of Nav.it and working through that, and kind of how does that impact your, I guess, just your thinking?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I am by no means a mercenary. I feel like that should, I'm a capitalist through and through. But I do think, fundamentally, I think we've kind of grown up in an environment in our family that I'm very grateful for, where we've recognized that making an impact does not need to be concessionary on return. But it does need to align with our values. So
1,000%.
Forcing yourself to go beyond, frankly, like the day-to-day, the easy return, the easy way out, the sure shot in the dark, and actually looking for things that are not only going to revolutionize an industry and have huge multiple impact, but also have impact on the communities and the environments and the society at large is incredibly valuable to lead your life around, and frankly steward your capital around, whether or not you're working off of something that you're building yourself and wealth you're building and hoping to build into intergenerational wealth for your family, or that you've inherited or you've come into whatever circumstance you've come into. Being intentional around that impact, I think is incredibly critical to the betterment of society. I don't think we can afford in this day and age to live without that lens on every single dollar we spend, invest, again, save and protect towards. Who you bank with matters. Where you invest your capital and into what fund and into what company matters, right? Where you go spend $5 at a coffee shop in your town matters. Please don't harm me, Starbucks, in the middle of the night. But if there's a mom and pop shop right next door and it's 50 cents more, maybe spend on one less coffee a week, but know that your capital towards that community entity is actually going to help the value of your time in that place accrue far faster than just being another cog in a wheel in the Starbucks machine. And I think that's just incredibly important to recognize. And, we now live in a time when we're seeing this I love talking about capital markets, could do so all day long. You're seeing that unfold in real time. The companies that actually care about the people and the environments that they're operating in are actually returning better profiles and more capital than their competitors who don't give a damn. And what an awesome day and age that we live in for that to be our reality, and for us to have the ability as retail investors to choose to align on those values.
I mean, just so powerful and so well said. I've absolutely loved chatting with you, and I could continue to chat with you for probably the next 5 days. You're brilliant. You're so mission oriented, but you are also a through and through entrepreneur, which I have just such mad respect for at the end of the day.
Thank you.
I want to wrap this on one last question. What does influence mean to you?
I was thinking a lot about this. I think influence to me surrounds that level of impact. I don't think we should be spending our time building influence in our communities and across our environments if it's not an influence that's aligned with the betterment of the people we hope to influence. I don't, you can look for me online. I think the last post I had on Instagram was about our wedding, which we got married a while ago. And I do all these cool things, but I think the influence the influence that we affect on the world is pervasive and big, and you never know who you're going to affect with the influence you have literally every single day. Take it back to the mom and pop coffee shop. Like, your $5 spent rather than $4.55 at Starbucks is going to influence their business and their mindset around you and who you look like in your community. That's just fact. So I think we should all wake up and go out there every single day, recognizing the influence we have on others and putting our best foot forward to try and affect the change we want to see.
Wow, Maia, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can everyone find you? How can they find Nav.it? Drop all the links.
Yes, well, all the Nav.it links, because like I said, I was on TikTok once and it was a dark time in my life. So Nav.it is on all the socials at Let's, like LETS, Nav.it, NAV.IT, Nav.itmoney.com if you want to learn more about us. And just download the app. Honestly, if you download the app, that's probably the deepest insight into like my human being. So
I love it. And you guys, you can find everything that you guys want to find on Nav.it. We'll link it in the show notes. Maia, thank you so much for going under the influence with us. This was so awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.